The theologian A.W. Tozer once remarked, "The vague and tenuous hope that God is too kind to punish the ungodly has become a deadly opiate for the consciences of millions." You see, millions of people have perished because they believed the lie that God is too kind to punish those who rebel against him. Now, in last week's video, we began discussing how a good God could send people to hell. We talked about the nature of hell being a place of eternal punishment for the wicked, as well as the nature of humans, rebels against God from birth who deserve nothing but God's wrath. Now today, we will continue this discussion by examining the nature of God. Now I hope to show you that seeing who God is will enable you to answer the question of why he can send people to hell and still be a good God. Now the first attribute of God that relates to this topic is God's holiness. Wayne Grudem, the theologian, in his book Systematic Theology, defines holiness in this way. God's holiness means that he is separated from sin and devoted to his own honor. So God's very nature is that he is separated from sin. He is absolutely pure, incomprehensibly pure. And whenever a human being in the Bible gets a glimpse of the full holiness of God, their reaction is one of fear and dread. For example, the prophet Isaiah writes in Isaiah chapter 6, "I saw the Lord seated upon the throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim, and one called to another and said, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory.' And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said," this is the prophet Isaiah speaking, "Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." Now this passage, among many others throughout the Bible, show that man is so sinful and God is so pure that we cannot stand in God's presence. God cannot allow sinners into heaven unless their sin is atoned for, because he is absolutely holy. Now the second attribute of God that relates to this topic is God's justice. God's justice means that God always does what is right. In fact, God is a standard for what is right. And God's justice requires that he punish sin. Just think of justice in human terms. We all understand that wrong actions deserve to be punished. Well, God is ultimately the one who will punish every wrong action. Acts 17 verse 31 states, "For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed." Furthermore, 1 Corinthians 4 verse 5 says how on that judgment day, he will bring to light what is hidden in the darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. You see, God is the perfect judge, and he knows the secrets of our hearts. He knows every sinister thought and every malicious deed. Sin cannot go unpunished. That is a requirement of God's justice, and that punishment is hell. Now the third attribute of God that we need to talk about is somewhat uncomfortable, but it's important, and that is God's wrath. You see, God's wrath is such that God hates sin with an intense passion. God is angry with people who rebel against him. Romans 1:18 states this very clearly. "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men." Now you and many people in our culture might see God's wrath as a bad thing, but it actually is partly what makes God so good. Let me put it this way with a couple questions. Would you want to worship a God who delighted in wrongdoing? Would you want to worship a God who is even indifferent towards evil? If God does not have wrath, if he did not have intense hatred towards evil, he would not be just or holy. God must punish sin to satisfy his holiness, his justice, and his wrath. But these are not the only attributes of God. The final attribute of God which we need to emphasize is his love. Now I know last week I said this would be a 2-part series, but alas, I am running out of time, and as this is a 6-minute video, I cannot talk about God's love until next week. So I will have one more video next week to conclude the discussion on this topic of why a good God can send people to hell. In next week's video, we will look at God's love and the good news of what Jesus has done to save us. Now I want to show you that the gospel provides us with the ultimate answer as to how a good God can send people to hell. I am Caleb Blada, and I hope this video has made you more educated, equipped, and emboldened for the glory of Christ.